Hey, what's going on? And welcome back to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Your host, Tomas Keenan, coming at you guys today. We've got Spencer. He's joining us today from Utah, one of my favorite places on the planet. And it's funny, we were just chatting. I got a house there and I got a house here in Texas, and spending time back and forth is always cool. But here we go. I don't know this guy from a hole in the wall, and we kind of just connected via this crazy thing called the internet. And we had some conversation here a couple minutes ago about what he's doing, and he's got a really cool company called solve.cloud. It's is it solved or is it solve.cloud, the actual name?
Yeah, funny story. So the reason that we actually, when we started, I was like, I had this concept of like, man, I want to call the company Solved, because a lot of consultancies are focused on the technology, they're focused on other stuff. And I was like, the thing that's going to differentiate me is how much more we care about the business impact and actually getting to a solution, not just like, well, we checked our box and now figure out the rest. And so I go and I look up the domain, and it's available, everything's ready, but it costs $3,000 for the domain. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start, get a few customers, and then I'll buy the domain. And so I go start, everything's good, come back about 6 months later as we had money coming in to buy the domain, and it had been taken, and they trademarked it and did a bunch of stuff. So we changed to solve.cloud and bought that domain. And someday we'll probably, still a little confusion because they're actually in a similar space out of Canada. And so we'll probably have to rebrand it at some point. But it's solve.cloud now.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. So, all right. Just for transparency for those who are listening, you guys basically you run a technology firm, and you help people implement systems, processes, automations, and whatnot, which is not uncommon in today's day and age. But you guys niche down, and you're very specific. You're involved in the Salesforce space.
Yeah.
So what was like? I hear Salesforce, and I get like my butthole tingles a little bit. It kind of scares me. I'm not gonna lie to you. All right. I've had some positive experiences with Salesforce, and I've had some terrible experiences with Salesforce. And let me give you some of the background so you understand my viewpoint from Salesforce. I was never a paid user. I never used it in one of my own businesses. When I was in the GPS tracking space, so we installed tracking devices and dash cameras in commercial vehicles all over the country, specifically the Northeast. A lot of the really big companies that we were subcontractors for, they use Salesforce to run their business, and they gave us access to a portal. So they would actually drop work order tickets or sales order tickets to us in this portal, and we had to go in there and update the ticket. Hey, we spoke to the customer, we booked the on-site appointment, and it basically just kept communication flowing back and forth without 8,000 emails between everyone. So what I did notice, though, is we had a couple of companies that use Salesforce, and whoever built the back end, because my understanding is it's pretty much a blank canvas. Whoever had built the back end of 2 or 3 of these companies, like, just did a terrible job, and it was the clunkiest piece of shit to use ever. And then we had one of our bigger companies, a company called NextTrack, who last I heard was acquired and purchased by Michelin, the tire company. There's a funny story there too. We can get into it another time. But we hear down the pike that, like, oh fuck, NextTrack just was acquired, and the new corporate over there is forcing them to implement Salesforce, and we're like, oh, not another one on Salesforce, because it wound up adding a ton of admin work from my team to keep this shit updated. So we're all worried and kind of pissed off and aggravated that NextTrack just converted to Salesforce. They rolled out their solution, and it was like, oh my God, it was a fucking dream. Because not only did we do all of our updating in there, they allowed us to do our invoicing for them right through the Salesforce portal. And it was just built really nice, and it streamlined everything for us. So, like, I've seen the back ends, a lot of different softwares that are out there that do similar things, and maybe not at the scale of Salesforce. You know, you got your high levels, you've got your Keep, your Infusionsoft, you've got your all the other ones that do similar shit, you know, Zoho. But the whole deal there is like, who's the actual architect of putting this together? I think that's the main question. It's like, yeah, cool, this is the tool. It has all these crazy capabilities, and it's a blank canvas. But if you don't bring in the right team or the right person that has a true skill set and understands the intricacies of this software, like, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and you're going to wind up costing your company more money than you even realize.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up perfectly. I mean, that's where needing to find someone who has deep expertise, not just in the tool. I mean, you need it in the tool, but also with the industry that you're in, and understands the whole process of what's happening, and can actually look at the business process and mean, it's really important because, you mentioned these partner portals is what they're called, or they've been called a lot of stuff. Salesforce likes to change the name of all their products every year. So that's called experiences. It's called Experience Cloud, but it's a portal. And so when you run into these portals, you actually have the same problem you have with your internal users, which is if you don't make sure the system offers enough value to them in terms of making their workflow more efficient, making it easier to do their job, then they don't want to do the shit you need them to do, because you need them to put the data in so you have visibility in your pipeline, or you have visibility, in your case, into your service process. If they got these vendors out there that they're subbing out to, or that are doing the field work, and they have no visibility into what's going on, that's a big problem. So they got this bright idea, we're going to implement a portal. Well, at the same time, if they never think about your experience, like, hey, I work with several different companies. I don't want to be logging into 10 different portals, updating 10 different systems, plus I got my system. I got to keep track of all what I'm doing somewhere. And it can't be in your system because I work for these other companies too. And so that's one of the key challenges with portals in particular, is really understanding on the other side, the people logging into the portal, what makes it valuable for them. And in the case of the example you gave, it was that invoicing side. It's also just the user experience, making sure that, because it is such a flexible tool, there's so many different things you can do, and you need a clear idea of how do I make that really usable for an end user so that it's a good experience. And that's why I end up hearing so many people, when they hear Salesforce, it's either I loved it, it was amazing, made my life so much easier, so much better, or that was the bane of my existence. My sales manager made me constantly update data I didn't want to update. It was super clunky, it was hard to use. And much of that comes back to that original implementation, or whoever helped design how that system is going to work.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to implementation itself, I think this is a key area. And this is something that I do in my own company now. When we want to go and design a new system, or maybe take something that's a very manual process and add some automation to it. One of the things that I was taught many years ago is like, hey, don't just go in and build it, because you're going to wind up having to go back in 17 times to fix what you built. And some of the coaches and mentors that I've worked with in the past on my self-development and professional journey are like, no. We're going to whiteboard this first, and we're going to map it out as best as possible. And yeah, we're not, it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to get this thing like 90% done using this modality, this tool that really doesn't take too much time, effort, and energy to put together. And then we're going to go drop it into the actual platform itself and see if it works right. So
that's the exact right way to think about it. And it's actually hard at times to convince business owners of this, but
yes,
if there's any value that the entrepreneurs listening to this are going to get, I mean, number one, every process, if you can't do it manually, don't talk to me about automating it. It's not the right thing to do. We tell clients we don't want to do this work for you when they come to us like, we have this brand new process, we've never done it before, and we have this huge vision. It's going to be fully automated. It's going to be perfect. And the problem with that is you just catastrophically underestimate the amount of exceptions, corner cases, different things that you're going to run into. So if you do it manually first, you say, look, I don't care if you have to put it in a spreadsheet or write it down on paper, for crying out loud. I mean, as manual as you have to do it to show, yes, we know how it works. And now we've seen all the little corner cases that are going to come up. We think it's going to work this way every time, but it turns out, sometimes, this thing changes and we have to go back and fix it. Or sometimes the customer doesn't follow our normal process and they want to do some custom redlining, and now this thing doesn't work. And so what do we do in this case? You find those edge cases. Now you can start by layering in the tool or the automation and saying, great, let's automate the 70% or the 80% that are following chalk. They are going the way we expect them to go. And let's leave these manual ones as manual for the exceptions first. Now, what business process decisions can we make to either reduce the manual, outside edge cases, or start to standardize them? So, maybe if we got customers that have a certain type of request frequently, we either stop offering that, or we have a specific offering for those corner cases that's designed for them. And now we test that out manually, and we can add automation then to make that seamless. And so even for my company right now, one of the things I'm working on is we're developing a new sales channel, and it's an all outbound motion. And so, I signed up for Apollo. I'm using that to pull in lead data. I'm doing outbound sequences and calls. Now, Salesforce can do all that. And I'm a Salesforce expert, and I have 60 Salesforce experts that work for me. So why am I not just building it immediately in Salesforce?
Great question.
All our business already works in Salesforce seamlessly. It's smooth. It works well. And so I'm not going to disrupt that yet. I'm going to find all the kinks in this by keeping all the data in Apollo, even though I don't want to use long-term their dialer, their sequencing tool, their emails. I want that all in Salesforce eventually. But first, I'm going to iron out the process, get my scripts clean, make sure that the team is all comfortable, and keep the data from muddying up what I have clean in my CRM. And then when that process is fully ironed out, then I'm going to integrate the systems. I'm going to push the data over. Now I'm going to use Salesforce's Pardot, their marketing automation tool, to do my own automation or sequences. I'm going to use my own dialer that I think works better than another dialer. And I'm going to build that all on this core part of my business. But anything that's new, even as an expert, starts in a silo. The business process gets clean, and then I layer on the automation. That's a big step a lot of companies miss because they just want to get to the fast, the automated, the efficient first, miss the business process side.
Yeah. Let's talk about dirty data for a minute, right? Now I'm guilty of this myself big time. You know, there was such a period of time with me, you know, kind of coming up in the self-development, personal development, and professional development space where it was like, all right, dude, I was born and raised as a blue collar dude, and I was a car audio installer for 22 years. And then all of a sudden one day, like, fuck, I own a business. And it's like, well, this manual method's not working great anymore. There's got to be a better way. You wind up hiring some coaches and whatnot to show you some things. And I went down this rabbit hole. The very first software I ever implemented was Infusionsoft, the original. Like, which is, you know, like, what the hell was I thinking?
Well, you got some advice, probably.
Yeah, but you know what? It served me still to this day because what I learned there it still serves in other platforms and tools that I use to this day. But one of the things that I was most guilty of was entering really shitty data from day one. Right. So like, let's get a little nerdy here, and like, not that nerdy, but a little nerdy. One of the things that I screwed up was like, okay, cool. I've got this customers, because we were using QuickBooks Online for all the billing and customer information for quite some time. QuickBooks allows you to export data via CSV file, right? Now you upload that CSV file into your CRM platform or whatever it is, whether it's Salesforce, Keep, High Level, I don't care what it is. Almost all of them allow some kind of data import like that. And I had no idea that you had to map the columns. So all this data, this 500 or 600, and this is not a massive data set. This is a small business data set that's coming in. You got 500 or 600 contacts that come in, and nothing's in the right place. So like, first name is in last name is in first name, phone number is in email. Like, it was a complete disaster. And like, the only way that I could figure out how to fix it at that point in time was to manually go into each contact record and start switching shit around, which you can just imagine how much time that's going to take. And it was one of those things like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. I know this is stupid, but I don't know any other way to go ahead and do this. And granted, now looking back at it, it's so crystal clear that I was nothing more but this huge, massive rock in my own way. But talk to me a little bit about like dirty data coming in to the platform. And again, this is irrelevant. I don't care whether you're using Salesforce or using some other platform. Dirty data is dirty data. Like, what have you seen in your professional experience where dirty data has really messed up a company? And what can people do to mitigate the risk of dirty data?
Yeah, it's a great question, because one of the most common things we run into is companies that have big dreams and aspiration, but it relies on data, and the data is either not there or it's not clean. And so then the question really that precedes all that, if you want to get that right, is you got to start with the end in mind of the business process. So when we map out, like, all our projects start with a current state and future state business process diagrams. This is how it works now. This is how it's going to work in the future. If we don't have a clear map of that, some people say, oh, skip the current state because it doesn't matter how we're doing now. It just matters how we're going to do it in the future. Well, how do you know that you didn't miss something that's happening today? You have to know exactly how everything's happening today, so you don't miss a step, or you think you built automation for it and it didn't. So you map out how things are happening today, and it only takes a couple hours at most to get all your business processes documented visually. Then you get your future state diagram, and from there, what you start looking at is, what are the things we want to measure? Like, this process, in order to know this process is working correctly, know that this process is something that's going to drive the results I want, as a leader, I really need to have certain insights. So let's take a very simple example, like a sales process. In our company, there's only a few things I really watch to make sure our sales are working the way they need to work. I need to know how many new leads we're getting every month, because I know ultimately what our value per lead is. I can run some math on that. I know long-term, if things are going to equal out, this many leads is going to lead to this much revenue. So I got to know how many leads are coming in. And so From there, I'm gonna look at the process and say, well, in the process, how do we have leads getting into the system? How do we make that as easy as possible and reduce all the clutter? Because people get carried away, they get excited. This system is customizable. I can track everything. I want my salespeople to create a lead and make sure they tell me the industry, the employees, the revenue, all the different things. Great, that'd be nice to have, but let's make sure when they're creating it, the only thing that's required, and we're gonna make it required in our process, we want the incentives to align to this, and we want the requirements to align to this, to say the lead has to be in Salesforce. You must create the lead. I need a name, and I need to know, where they came from. That's it. And I'm gonna be extremely rigorous in my accountability as a leader and as a manager in making sure those leads are getting entered. Every time I talk to my team about their leads, I'm going to talk to them about what's in the system. They say, oh, I got this other lead. Where is it? Everything, all the behaviors, the practices are going to be mapped to getting them to put that thing in there, because that's one of the metrics I have to have accurate to run my business. And then going through the process and finding, okay, for the rest of my sales process, I got to know how many of those leads are becoming opportunities and what's the value we expect on each of those opportunities. And for each of those, maybe I need to know exactly what products are on there, or maybe I need to know when they're going to close. So, like, when do I expect that deal to close? Is this for this month, or is this 4 months out? So now I can start to piece together a pipeline. And then with some assessment, with a little bit of reporting, I can figure out things like, all right, what percentage of my leads turn into opportunities? What percentage of my opportunities turn into closed deals? On average, what is the value of those closed deals? And lifetime value, what does that become in revenue? And now I got 4 or 5 metrics I can use to know the entire health of my sales pipeline. But what I got to be disciplined on is, to start every process, I take down to the tiniest number of data inputs that it takes to get the metrics I need to manage the process. And then I implement with only those data things on the screen. I don't even give them anything else to put on. This is something that a lot of companies will be like, oh, we'll just put it on there. They can fill it out if they want. No, I'm not even going to put it on the screen. I'm taking it off the screen. They're going to put in the things I need to measure. And then I'm going to have them tell me, hey, man, one of the things I really want to track when I'm trying to sort my opportunities, it'd be helpful if I could group it by industry, because I really need to understand which ones are in SaaS and which ones are in financial services. Okay, that's great. We'll do that. I'll do that to help you out. And I'll give you a view, right? So now I'm going to help you as a user get more value out of the system. I'm going to start tweaking and tweaking. I'm going to start with the absolute thing you must do for me in order to be compliant with the process. And then I'm going to start looking at, how do I make it better for you? And then when I need something new, I need to figure out, how does that help you? And I need to start adding that into the process. And so you do that incrementally, and it leads to something where down the line, you may get 15, 20 different data fields filled out, but you're getting there because they have the vision for how it helps them, and it's driving utility, and it's helping the business. And this takes such discipline on the part of the entrepreneur, the leader, the person who owns the process, because we all would love to have so much more data. And it seems like it's no big deal to just ask for or require more things, but it is. It's a huge time cost. It's a huge distraction. And so complexity is the enemy of execution. And so you got to get it as simple as possible. And that's kind of the process you go through. You diagram the process, you understand what metrics you need to hold that process accountable, and then you reverse engineer from there what data has to go into the system and at what part of the process does it need to go in. And we drive ruthless adoption on those things with requirements in the system and with behavioral things in our coaching. And then only at that point do we start to add other ones, because now that's all assuming data is going in from the user. You brought up a second case, which is doing an initial data load. My advice on that is, every company has bad data that needs to get into a system. The best way to get the best bang for your buck, and this is true this is kind of a global lesson about working with any consultant of any kind, but certainly for us, what we advise customers to do is, when you think about, I've got this data and I need to get it into the system, and I don't want to have to clean it up. Well, the problem is, you're the one who knows the data. Consultant doesn't know anything about that data. So if you just give it to them, they'll probably get it in, and they'll probably get it decently clean, but it's going to take a lot of hours. And they're going to, if they're responsible consultant, they're going to quote you that. They're going to say, hey, I need 20 hours to figure out this data, and then 30 hours to load it, and whatever. It's going to be all this time. But what you want to do is, you want to go through the process on your own, either in the spreadsheet, or let's say it's already in your system like it was for you in Infusionsoft. You want to look at that and go, okay, let me look at one record and let me see what's wrong. I'm going to write down what's wrong. I'm going to write down the rules by which I think I could fix that. So in other words, the last name's in the first name field. I need the last name to go to first name, and I need first name, which is currently in the company field, to go company to first name. Let's just do that. And let's do that at scale for everything. And some records, it might mess up. They might be right now. They might mess up. But when I look at these one-on-one, I check 10 out of 100, and I say, yeah, most all of these have the exact same problem. So can I write that into a rule that then can be done at scale, because a consultant or a programmer can do that really quickly. It's so easy to export the data, transform the data in Excel, or if it's a larger data set in a MySQL database or whatever we need, write some scripts that do that at scale, and then load it back in. Or just have you validate it within the spreadsheet of the database, and then we know what's going in. And so what you need to find with data is, where is the 20% that's going to get 80% of the value? Same thing applies. Understanding which metrics we care most about being accurate, because we have to report on them for our processes. Get those ones right. Write scripts that fix that at scale, and then get it in. And then what I like to encourage companies to do is, for all the fields where there's not any real logic, there's not a lot of rules, you just can't make sense of it, then what I recommend they do is they create a large text field in Salesforce. You can do this in most databases. They'll have like a large text. Now, this is a useless field in terms of reporting and everything else, but we just label that historical data. And all the rest of the data, we put a label for what field it was in the old system and the text of what it was. And then we load that in one field into the system. And that allows you to, now I'm in Salesforce, I'm on my record, I have the few fields I know work, and then I can go down to that other field and say, oh, I see I used to have a phone number under, mobile whatever, and there was two different numbers, and so we couldn't make any sense of it, but I remember this. I'm going to just copy this and put this into the real mobile field now on my own. You can do some over time corrections to the really ambiguous stuff, where when you touch a record, you look at the old stuff and just decide what you're going to pull in. And that's how I would recommend treating any of the stuff that you can't develop rules that are going to apply to maybe 80+% of your records. That's you just have to fix that over time with process. When you touch the record.
That's a really cool workaround, and I like it. I want to backtrack here to something you said before about, like simplifying the form or the inputs for the team member to use when they're working with the CRM. And the same thing has been taught to me from a marketing perspective when it comes to lead magnets, right? So cool, you want to pop up a lead magnet on your website. Awesome. I'm all for it. Right. But one of the things that a lot of people try to do, and I think it's a mistake, and you may agree with me on this, is like, okay, cool, I got a lead magnet, and let's say it's a pop-up that comes up after 15 seconds of being on the homepage of my website. Like, hey, download this lead magnet. And you're requesting that person give you first name, last name, phone number, email, date of birth, firstborn child's name. Like you're killing it right there. And like, no one's going to actually give you their information and grab this lead magnet from you, because you're making the process so difficult to get a freaking downloadable PDF. Right. So how do we simplify this? So there has to be a deliverability method, right? And if we're putting data into a CRM, we at least want to grab a name. So I was always taught, at least grab first name and at least grab email, and then give that person what they need. Later on down the line, during your communications, your potential sales call, other information, other emails or stuff that you're sending out to this person, you have the opportunity to collect more data. But get the basics in for now, so you start building the data set in the system. So you start building the list, and you can send out emails, and you can interact and communicate with others.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, I mean, with all this stuff, it really depends where you're at in your business. The advice we give to like small solopreneurs or like 1 to 10 employee type companies is very different than what we give to big companies. But you got to know what's possible, and you got to know what's right for your phase of development. So when you're early on, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is how easy it is actually to get additional data. Now, there's some cost to it. So small businesses, we may or may not point in this direction as often. As you get a little bit bigger, there's sources like Apollo or a ZoomInfo or other data sources where if I have an email, I can get almost all the information I want about them. First name, last name, I can get it automatically pushed into my CRM. So I'm willing to pay for that data if it's worth it to me. And it's not, exorbitantly expensive. It's a cost, for a higher tier of ZoomInfo, you might be looking at $15,000 a year or something. But you're getting then for each of those people to fill out and just give you even just their email. You can pull in first name, last name, company, revenue, whatever the things are that you're looking for. They automatically have a database of that, and you're enriching that data. So that's called data enrichment. And so data enrichment is a really useful process if you have the money to pay for it. And if you don't, then I'd probably grab first name and email it, and then think about what my funnel looks like for acquiring additional information when it makes sense to them. And that's one of the key design principles that we know, but then we don't apply is we know it when we go to get a white paper or a lead magnet, and then we're like, why the hell you want 5 different things from me? But when we are looking at our business, we're like, man, I'd love to know their company and exactly what stage of development they're at and all this stuff. It's like, you got to put yourself in the user's shoes. And the better you do that, then you can think about, there's times when they want to give you more information because it helps them. They don't want to give you more information to help you. They want to help themselves. And so, from a marketing perspective, if someone asks me for even an email, I may not download it unless I think my immediate assumption when they even ask me for an email is, all right, do I want to be marketed to by this company? Because I'm assuming they're going to. And so if I don't, then if the white paper value isn't higher than me accepting emails and being marketed to, then I won't even take it then. So there's a case to be made. Chris Walker is one of the people I admire the most in this space, who talks a lot about doing things that are not gated in any way and are totally just building the trust there, and then having opportunities for them to opt in when they're ready. Because if they are ready to be marketed to, we should make it extremely easy for them to tell us, hey, I think I'm ready for your service because I've gotten 2 or 3 pieces of content from you. I love what I'm seeing, and I think I need what you have to offer.
Yeah, it's pretty valid. I never thought about it that way, but you're kind of right. It's like, hey, let's, I got nothing to hide. I'm not going to, spam you and send crap to you that you don't necessarily want or need at this point in time, but let me still continue to provide some value to you. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have the mindset of like, well, I provide all the value I want for free on my social channels, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, but they don't apply that same rule or methodology to the website. And I certainly do not. And after having this conversation with you, it may force me to go back and reconsider and make some changes there, because I think it holds some validity, to be quite honest with you.
Well, and every funnel is different. I mean, you can design it any way. You may give them 2 options. You may say, hey, I can send this to you via email here, or I also have it posted over on social. Come follow me there, and you get it for free and don't have to.
Yeah, bingo. I like that too.
Give them some options where it's like, I don't want to be marketed to yet, but I am interested in what you have to say, and I might in the future. And so those are the people that certainly get me as a consumer, that give me some options that make sense for me. And, the other thing is, it's not the worst thing in the world that you're qualifying them a little bit and asking for their email. It's just, there may be a segment of people who you're losing there in the funnel that you don't have.
Yeah. Or you get the people like me who've got 800 email addresses. And if I want a piece of content bad enough, I'm going to give you one of my bum email addresses. I'm going to get the lead magnet anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
It's also, from a marketer's perspective, it's a really good way to go in and watch and see how others are operating and doing things. Like, I've learned a ton about, hey, this is some really good ways to go out and market and put some email sequences together and whatnot, based upon like intentionally opting into certain people's lists, so I can see how they do things at a very high level.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's talk about your company a little bit here, right? You guys are doing some cool shit with Salesforce, and I think it's awesome. It's very, very, very much so needed in the business world. But tell me a little bit about who's the ideal client that you guys truly enjoy and thrive working with?
Yeah, so we've got really 2 profiles that we are very focused on and that we see a lot of success with. Probably my number 1 top would be kind of mid-market SaaS businesses, companies that are high-tech in nature and generally software companies, and B2B software companies mostly, because they make extensive use of Salesforce. There's a lot of different tools that we support that they need ongoing assistance with. And so there's a strong fit there. There's also a nice thing about working with SaaS businesses is they usually understand a lot of the principles we have to teach a lot of businesses. They understand because they have to teach their customers. So things about how to implement a system, how to work in an iterative fashion, how to prioritize or gather user feedback, just all these things, testing, training, there's much less to teach them, because as users and stakeholders, they're doing it already. And so they kind of get that. So that's probably where we've seen some of the biggest success long-term, is with those companies that are anywhere from 500 to 10,000 users of Salesforce that are in the high-tech space and need a variety of things. We do everything from custom data integration. We're now doing some AI stuff for companies. We're doing obviously all the different Salesforce tools. So things like Sales Cloud, Revenue Cloud, CPQ is a big one for SaaS businesses. Is they need help with kind of designing their pricing and quoting tool to operate the right way. And then that's always because leaders are coming in, and now there's a new pricing and a new way of looking at our product marketing and a new way of commissioning our reps. And so that ends up leading to a lot of system changes, because they don't have the admin staff to do that at scale. They automated it from day one, and then when they change it, the system has to support it. Otherwise, they can't do it at scale. So So yeah, that's probably the number one ideal. And the second area that we focus a lot is financial services, which actually was an area I wanted to avoid originally because it's the antithesis of tech. It's a laggard industry with a lot of older users that are just barely wading into digitizing their business. And it's high compliance, higher sort of legal scrutiny and different things. And so I thought, these two don't make sense to do together. But I've always been a very opportunistic entrepreneur, and there's different philosophies on this, but for me, I believe in trying to maximize the opportunities that you have. It's why I started a company in this space, was because of the opportunity. And it's why over time we started to niche down to these. And so when COVID hit, our whole pipeline dried up. And we had a really diverse, we were taking our clients in all industries and kind of just like any new business, trying to grow wherever we could. And so when COVID hit, we were only at about maybe $1.5 million in revenue at the time. So still a fairly small business. And so we look at that and we see all this pipeline drying up, and I think everybody was scared. We're like, man, what's going to happen? But my first thought was looking at our projects. Certain projects went on hold and certain projects didn't slow down one bit. And I said, what is it about our customers that are still spending money with us that's different? And universally, they were in two industries. It was financial services and SaaS. And so we dug deeper into, hey, you're still supporting us at a time where things are kind of crazy. And even them, they're like, we might pause the project. We might not. I don't know. Budgets are all getting frozen, whatever, but let's just keep going. And so our lifeblood during that period were those companies. And that only lasted a couple months before all of a sudden it actually became a boom for our business. But it was a boom in those two industries. Those were the two that really were going to open up the pocketbooks and start spending. And so tech spent a lot. Financial services spent a lot. They had to, because a lot of these people, in order to compete in a COVID world where you can't be in person all the time, had to start digitizing, had to support work from home, had to support stuff they'd been putting off. So there was a lot of work to do in those two industries. And so we ended up building really close relationships in the financial services space, especially with RIAs. We've worked with insurance and banks and credit unions and different things, but the biggest chunk, more than half of what we do in the financial services space, is RIAs, advisors, financial services firms, along the lines. And so that's the area that then we got a lot of domain expertise, started to really understand their business and the constraints they have. And there's also special tools from Salesforce that most firms don't focus on that are specific to that industry that then we gain deep expertise in Financial Services Cloud and Omni Studio, which is a whole automation suite that is only applicable to certain industries. So anyway, so we got that deep expertise staying close to them. And then as we came out of COVID and some of the craziness around that, it led to just becoming the definitive strategy for us to stay in those lanes and stay niched down and continue to grow.
So, all right, questions here for you. You mentioned the word project, right? And that one kind of speaks to my heart because I think that everything that's got a start date and an end date is effectively a project, right? And that's just how we live as humans, especially as entrepreneurs. So when it comes to project management, what does that look like for your team managing the individual projects for your clients? And also, what does that look like from you in your seat as a leader of the organization? How are you internally managing the projects that help grow your company?
Good question. All right, so there's two aspects to this. How do we do the project management for our clients? When I started this company, there were certain beliefs I had that were somewhat different than a lot of the companies that I had worked with in the past. One of the challenges I took on at my last company before I had decided to start this company was I wanted to replace myself, but we mostly just had new and experienced people underneath me. And I thought, man, the hardest thing about consulting is you got to know what you're looking for. You got to be able to recognize in the moment and make the recommendations and have the experience. So how to take these inexperienced people and get them to be able to succeed on these projects if I'm not the one doing it and running all of it, because I can't run all the projects that are assigned to me. I have to work through these others. And at the time I was listening to a podcast and they talked about a Harvard business study that said the number one trait of the most successful CEOs is the ability to ask questions. And they talked about why and what that meant. And one of the things that they showed is that the ability to ask questions is how you teach people how to think. I walked away from that realizing, okay, if I want to teach people how to think, then instead of doing what most businesses do and just layering process after process, it's like, follow this, check this box, follow these steps, don't deviate. I wanted to preserve innovation and I wanted to grow faster than that. And so I looked at what are the questions I need to develop to be able to work through other people and teach them how to think about the project so that they run it the way I would run it. And so that when they're running the project, if I ask the right questions, I can get them to tell me the stuff they didn't notice. So I'll give you one example of these questions that I found to be one of the most powerful questions that we have in this accountability framework that we use. But it's, imagine the client just called me and they're upset. Mm-hmm. Go back and think on your recent meetings. Why would they have done that? And the client hasn't called me. But the thing is, in the moment, as a consultant, if I ask you, how's the project going? You're going to say, great. Because if it wasn't going great, you would have told me already, you would have done something about it. But if you're a young consultant, you don't know how to identify that something might be wrong. When I ask this question, it changes the internal frame and the thought process. And they go back and like, oh, you know what? There was that point during the meeting where they kind of looked a little off put and I kind of disregarded it. So I'll just tell you about that. Yeah, I was doing a demo and they just sort of like kind of had a grumpy face and I didn't know what that was about, but I moved on and by the end they seemed happy. Great. I'm going to go watch the recording of that call now. I'm going to dig into that. I'm going to tell you why they were upset and we're going to get ahead of it before they ever come bring that back to us. Mm-hmm. So now I know how to teach you and I'm going to teach you how to recognize this in the future and how we get ahead of it so it doesn't blow up later. So a lot of consulting and project management is teaching these thought patterns and then helping people develop the skills to work through that. And so we have a whole framework that we do every week for every project where a very experienced manager takes anyone underneath them and looks at each project, walks through these accountability questions, and then teaches them how to think about it. So that's one of the important elements. The second thing is, obviously, you have to have a system. And for us, we chose Asana as our project management system. It's much more of a task manager that has layered in project management, which is the reason I like it, because a lot of our clients have varying requirements about how they want to work, and we want to be adaptable to that while still following our project management framework. And so Asana allows us to give free licenses to our clients that we don't have to pay for to let them log in and see everything, which clients love. They rarely take advantage of it, but they love the fact that when they need to, they can log in and see where is each task at, when are things scheduled, etc. So having that visibility, I think, is important. And then from a cost structure, being able to do that for free instead of paying for licenses for our customers is like cost. So we use Asana for that. We also can do templates in Asana, which we use. So it's like, if this is the type of project, it's going to have certain milestones and things laid out for you as a starting point to make sure you're on the right track. And then it also has the ability to do some other pretty handy stuff for us in terms of linking to multiple projects. So let's say we have some work that we don't want the client to see, but we want to have an internal conversation about. We can just take that task, put it in an adjacent project that's internal only, work through that and bring it back to the external project when it's ready. And so there's a lot of things like that that allow it to work well for us. It's also got some really good timeline views, which are just attractive and easy to use with the customer to put things in perspective about when timelines are going to hit. So we have a project management methodology. The other thing is we only hire people from basically one program right now. There's a program out of BYU that is the information systems program. It's a program I went through. The leaders that work with me on the executive team, we all actually went through that program together 8 years ago. And when we were there, it was like the number 4 program in the nation. I don't know what it is now, but it's a top program. It's a very good program. And even though I'm someone who actually is generally not super pro college, if you're going to go to a program that's extremely good and going to give you the right skills, and we know that program gives the skills. One of the things they teach is one of the best project management courses I've ever seen. And so when the people we recruit from there come in, we know the foundation they have of project management skills, and we layer on our principles and methodologies on top of that. Mm-hmm. So there's certainly something to be said as well for, like, if you're going to hire, we've taken a pretty unique approach in that we don't have separate project managers from our technical staff. Mm-hmm. Most firms do that. They hire someone specialized, and it creates more overhead for the project. We would rather teach a technical person how to be a great project manager, because the reality is, if there's a risk, they can explain why it's a risk. They can explain what it means to your business. And they can also just dramatically decrease the overhead costs so you get more value as a customer. Yeah. So now you're only working with 1 or 2 people who are the real people doing the work, not, I'm talking to Sally, who's the project manager, who talks to Billy, who's the architect, who has to relay all this information. It's just such a mess with so many firms that have all the divided specializations. Yes. We're trying to build really high quality integrated professionals who have the soft skills, technical skills, and project management skills to really delight a customer. Yeah. Now, that's the external side of the clients. On the internal side, we follow a framework from a book called The Advantage. And actually, we implemented this about 1.5 years ago because I hired a friend of mine who's a CEO I really respect. I invested in his tech company, and I watched the way he ran his company as an investor. And I was like, this guy's a better CEO than I am in a lot of ways. And so I want him to come audit me and tell me what I need to do different. So I had him and audit all our financials and audit our processes and just poke everywhere. I said, if you were the CEO of my company, I want you to just spend as much time as you need and figure out and ask all the questions you'd be asking of my executive team to figure out where you think the holes are. And he was extremely complimentary. There's a lot of stuff that he really liked. One of the key things he noticed that I was never able to really put a good grasp on, that I was struggling with as we got bigger, is this concept of clarity and making sure everything is clear throughout a much larger organization than I was used to managing. And so there's this book called The Advantage, and it has a framework for how to implement that. And we started following that. And the reason I bring that up around project management is because one of the things you do every week in a weekly staff meeting, we call it our leadership alignment meeting, is you take a look at your thematic goal, which is the one constraint, the thing that is most important for your business right now, that if you were to solve that, would unlock everything else. And so whatever that one thing is, we look at that every week, and then we set up 4 to 7 defining objectives that we're going to go do to accomplish that as fast as possible. The entire executive team has ownership of it, and we all have to go focus on making that thing real, because that's going to break through whatever the primary constraint of the business is. And then we have standard operating objectives that we constantly have to stay on top of, just because you can't stop invoicing customers and doing quality work, and there's certain things that have to always be happening. And so you give each defining objective and each standard objective a green, yellow, red rating every week. And then you start at the reds and say, what are we going to do to fix these immediately? Then you go to the yellows. What are we going to do to fix these? And then all your efforts that next week as an executive team are driving to the right things and creating immense focus. And so for projects, we do less projects and more every week, looking at the top constraint, the top things we're going to do to unblock that, and really aggressive, focused effort on those things.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, it's a methodology I haven't heard before. It's definitely what I'm going to look into and go. I mean, there's lots of different systems and methodologies when it comes to operating a business. And I'm a firm believer that people should go and explore and pull from each of those methodologies what aligns and works best with them and their companies. And then kind of I call it the mixed martial arts method, put together something from all of those different pieces that you've learned that works really good for you, and go make your own operating system from it.
So, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the clearer you are about your values and your approach and what defines you, the easier it is to parse through all that advice and figure out, like, if you're constantly trying to be what every system tells you to be, it's going to be tough. But what's nice about being really clear on who you are is you'll notice certain advice really resonates. Like this book for us, a lot of the justifications he was giving for things, we actually had processes in place already to do that just weren't as good. So he just had a better way of executing on what we were trying to do. But I had looked at other frameworks in the past. I was like, this is dumb. Like, we don't run our business this way. We don't believe the same things this person believes. And so we could have wasted years trying to implement that particular. Now, there was still value. It's not like they didn't serve anything good, but I think that's my advice to entrepreneurs. When you're trying to find that right thing, the clearer you are about your values and your strategy and your beliefs, makes it so much easier to parse through that. And it actually allows other people to help you better. The reason this CEO recommended that book is because he saw the alignment, whereas if he were to just say, this is how I'd run the company, he probably would have done a little differently.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's something that's been helpful for me.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, let's switch gears here for a second. So you clearly operate at a high level. You run a successful company. You got a bunch of other things going on as well, investments in the whole 9 yards. What do you do on the personal side of the house to keep your energy up, to keep your mental clarity clear, and basically keep you focused and moving forward on a daily basis?
That is a really good question, because last year was my worst year, and it was our worst year as a company. And something I have always believed, but now I believe even firmer than ever, is every company grows extremely quickly to the capacity and capabilities of the leader or the leadership. It's not always just one person. And so we didn't grow last year nearly like we have in the past. We were triple figure growth every year for 3-4 years. And then year 5, it was like we grew like maybe 50% end revenue, 20% by certain metrics. So depending on how you look at it, it's still nothing to be ashamed of.
Sure.
But it's not the same. And I didn't feel the same. I could tell that I sort of hit this point where it's like, well, I built the company by hiring people I hired always based on talent, way more than experience. And I knew I could give them the skills that they needed. And that works up until you hit the limit of your skills. And so we had hit the limit of things that I knew how to do. And now I was sort of floundering in the water going, I got to figure out the next thing. And how do I do this thing? This is all new to me. It's all I'm trying to grow so I can help the others grow. And that was a really tricky place to be. And so some of that just resulted in me being, at the time, I would say I called it patient and trying to justify, like, I need to let them do this. I don't want to go back to being more of an individual contributor. I need to continue to lead. I need to grow as a leader, but I need to empower them and let them work through it. So sales weren't growing as fast as I wanted them to. And one of my talents is that I can go sell really effectively. But I didn't want to go back and be like, I'm going to save the day. I needed the people I had put in to take that over, to work through it. But I still didn't even support them well enough. And so there was all these things I was not doing. So I held us back last year in a big way. And I could identify that. And part of what had happened from a mentality standpoint is I've already hit all my goals that I had for like 65. I've already passed all those. You talk net worth or like things I wanted to accomplish. Like I realized I had set all these goals I thought were big, but now I'm there. Yeah. And that can also put you in a place of just like, why am I doing this? Like, what is this even worth doing? And so I just was trying to work through that. And I think it was September, October of this last year, I went to a local networking event called Silicon Slopes here in Utah. And Tony Robbins came and spoke at that event for like 3 hours. And I mean, I had heard of him. I'm like, oh, some like motivational guy or something, whatever. And, but in that 3 hours, I was like, this is what I've been missing. Like, this is what I need to hear right now. I had beliefs that were holding me back. I had a lot of confusion internally that I think just held myself and the company back. And so I said, all right, I believe in the stuff he just said in 3 hours. I'm going to go listen to him longer. So I signed up for his biggest conference, which is a 6-day conference. It was in West Palm Beach, called Date with Destiny. And so I signed up for that. That was this last December. That changed my life. In 6 days, more changed for me in that 6 days than have changed at any other point in my life, except for maybe the 2-year service mission I served for the church that I was a part of as a young adult. And that's 2 years of 16 hours a day, door to door, selling Jesus, essentially. So that's a pretty transformative event over 2 years. But that Date with Destiny transformed so many things for me, of understanding which beliefs I had were holding me back, what was wrong with my mentality, that I had started to experience a lot of just scarcity mindset and a victim mindset that I never would have identified with. I didn't know I had done it to myself. Yeah. I'd really gone from really leaning into uncertainty and entrepreneurship to now, like, I need to protect what I have, and this is good enough, and I just need to be like, just some really stuff that I had to work out in my mentality. And then I came back from that ready to just fly. And also I had historically, one of the big beliefs I had historically that kind of held me back was, you talk about the 5 people you're around being kind of, really important. Well, there's these studies they've done, and one of the things they have found is that if the people you're around are generally doing better than you, you'll be less happy, but you'll be more ambitious. And if the people you're around are less successful you'll be more happy, but less ambitious. Or maybe I said that the same way. The point is, ambition and happiness seems to be paradoxical to me based on who I spent my time with. But then, and so I started to think, maybe I need to not like constantly go for more. I don't want to get too carried away and lost in the like, oh, I got to be bigger, better. I don't want to always be competing with everyone else. And so I just didn't know how to reconcile those two things. And a Date with Destiny, where what I realized is, if I fix my value system and my beliefs such that I am living my values every day and I'm enjoying that, then I can enjoy the journey and still have really ambitious goals. And so I can set really in fact, I need really ambitious goals to find purpose and meaning. So I'm going to continue to set really ambitious goals, but it's not about the people I'm around. It's about, if my mentality is correct, the things I believe in, I'm honoring my values, I can enjoy the journey all the way there. And so that was a big transformation for me, that since then I've just been on fire of really enjoying the process every day, enjoying everything that I'm doing, and frankly, correcting some of the other limiting beliefs I had about what I needed to do as a leader. And so now I'm personally building out a new outbound engine to accelerate our growth. And I'm just unwilling now to accept any self-justification I give myself that is going to hold me back from the result. At this point, the result is all that matters. And if I don't have it, it's because I'm not doing what it takes. And so I'm going to do what it takes until I get to the result, instead of constantly worrying about, what does this mean? What does it mean about my title? And does it mean I'm less successful? Or am I going to be able to replace myself in this? And I don't want to give up these things I've developed. Just so many things in your head that are limiting. And so I've really tried to shed those. So if you never heard of Tony Robbins, he has an audiobook that's only like $11 that I found to have a lot of the best insights from the conference. It's called Unleash the Power Within, Audible. I'm giving that to all my friends and family. And I'm like, look, this is a taste of it. If you end up not liking it, no problem. It's just a lot of strategies for fixing your own belief systems that are holding you back.
Yeah. Very cool, man. It sounds like you went there, you got what you needed from it. And what does not surprise me, just in the short period of time that I've gotten to know you, is you went home and you did the damn work.
That's all you can do.
There's so many people, I've seen this in the self-development space over and over and over again. It's like these people come in, they get involved, and they become conference junkies. And they just start hitting all the events. And 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you go to an event that you went to 2 years ago, and fuck, there's the same person, and they're in the same exact position they were when you first met them. And like, it irks me. I'm not mad at that person, but I almost feel bad for that person that they're so fucking blind or so unwilling to do the work that they haven't realized that they're still in the same seat they were when I met them 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of it's the mental masturbation thing that people talk about. It's like you can be like, ooh, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then you give yourself the reward based on the hope that you'll eventually do it. Or you can set the goal and be like, I'll give myself the reward when I get it, when I get there. So yeah, there's certainly, like everything, there's a right way to use it. If you want to go to certain conferences and personal development, personal development is so important, but it can't be the goal. It's a means. So whoever you're going to go to, maybe it's not Tony Robbins, maybe it's not whatever, but it's got to be giving you something you need. And so I always historically looked at books to do that for me. That's how I chose which books to read. Was like, oh, I need to learn more about strategy. I'm going to go read the top strategy book. Or I need to learn more about this part of my business. I'm going to go read the top book on that and try to just fill in those gaps. But especially at a certain level, the hardest thing to find is other entrepreneurs who are in a similar place. So that's one of the things I got from this conference was I met people who were in a similar place to me that could share. And so from a networking standpoint, it was really powerful. Yeah. And then I got strategies to break through some of my limitations that I can use. And if you go and you feel great, but you don't get strategies, you don't come back and start changing things, then I agree with you. At that point, you got to do something else. Like, otherwise, you're going to be in the same place forever.
Yeah, you might as well go to a concert at that point.
Yeah, if you like music, just go feel great and go to a concert. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, awesome. Spencer Lowe, man, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you here today. I really appreciate you and your team reaching out and applying to come on to the show. I think this has been a great conversation. I've personally picked up on a couple of things that I'm going to take and implement and talk to my team about when we're done here. But with all that being said, what's the best place that listeners can connect with you?
Yeah, so a couple places. First would be I started a passion project mid last year that is a podcast similar to this. It's about really just giving back. It doesn't do anything for my business. It's just sharing what I consider to be the biggest secret, which is leverage. Where can you get more out of smaller inputs? And I think that's a missing piece. And so you can go to lessonsinleverage.com and it has all the links to our stuff there. I'd love to have you on our podcast at some point. Maybe we do that as well. And have a conversation about leverage specifically. And then also linked on that website is my LinkedIn. That's the best place to communicate with me. I don't do a ton of social media. I do outbound on social media, but I don't really spend time on most places except for LinkedIn. So that if you want to reach out, that's going to be the other best place to connect.
Cool, man. Appreciate you coming on here today, Sarah. Thank you.
All righty, take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Make sure you head over to stepitupentrepreneur.com and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast.